Hello, my forward thinking and open minded tribe, and welcome to Rewoke, Rewriting Our Kids' Education podcast. My name is Michelle Person, and we are on a journey to change the face of education. We are rethinking, re examining, and re educating ourselves and our children. On this show, we work hard to educate ourselves about all things so we can make informed, independent decisions about what is best for us and our lives and the lives of our children. We have pulled the curtain back and dug into some topics that challenge firmly held belief systems and that require a new way of thinking. We've talked about mental health, how we approach the food we eat, and even spirituality. Now, what kind of guy would I be if I didn't take time to explore one of the most controversial ideas slowly creeping across this great country of ours, the legalization of marijuana? Even though nearly two-thirds of Americans say marijuana should be legalized for at least medicinal purposes, recreational use is only legal in 19 states. Now, there are so many aspects of this topic to explore. Is it habit forming? Are there long-lasting effects? Does it lead to harder drugs? But the one that I personally care about, and honestly, it's because I believe the answers to all those other questions is no, is how much money is there to be made off of the legalization? And the answer is a lot. In 2022, states where marijuana is legal reported a combined total of $11.2 billion in tax revenue. For me, the more important question has become, how does one enter this industry? And how do we as a people use this new industry to undo some of the harm that has been perpetrated onto our communities now that states are recognizing that possessing, growing, selling, and using marijuana does not make one a criminal? And oh yeah, are you woke? According to the ACLU, despite roughly equal usage, blacks are 3.7 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana. So legalization should be a good thing, right? We'll stop getting arrested and possibly be afforded an opportunity to work in an industry that we know just as much about as our white counterparts. Wrong. It can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 just to launch a store. Additionally, remember how we were arrested 3.7 more times than our white counterparts? Even if we could come up with a capital, having a police record, ironically sometimes for selling marijuana, can exclude you from getting a license. Talk about the irony. Our guest today is Nicole Ross, and she is the owner of Neura Labs, a minority-owned, woman-led licensed medical marijuana processor and manufacturer, and she knows all too well about the barriers keeping us from cashing in on this new gold rush, and she has some tips on how we can snag our piece of the pie before it's all gone. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to hear about everything you know about the cannabis industry.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm excited to share my knowledge and insight on the cannabis market here in Ohio.
Awesome. All right, there are so many questions that I have, but I'm going to start with, how did you end up in this industry to begin with? I mean, like you are like a unicorn. You are a female, you are a black woman, you are in Ohio, and you're not where the most of the where the almost the hub in Ohio. I think we talked a little bit off camera, is in Cleveland. You're in Southern Ohio. You're down here in Dayton. And so I mean, like on every level, location, gender, race, you are not supposed to be where you are. So I want you to talk to people about how you got to where you are right now.
Oh, well, 10 years go by fast in a market that is growing so, consistently. I started working in the cannabis industry back in California when I lived out there, more so pursuing the music avenue of my life in my 20s. So in California, there was a medical program that allowed me to understand cannabis in a whole different perspective. Being from Ohio, it wasn't something that was readily around my family or my community personally that I grew up in. So, I knew people who consumed, but it wasn't something that I had direct interest in. There were students in school that got involved, but it was still not a part of my environment personally. So when I moved to California, I got a whole different perspective of cannabis professionals, the usage of it, from a light of that this is a medicine as well as something that can help with a lot of other things outside of just the consumption and the uses from a medicinal avenue. And it just opened my eyes to why it chose me versus me choosing it. And at that time, I didn't understand where I would be in cannabis, being in California, and like I said, pursuing other things as far as music. I then met a business partner at the time who was infusing food as far as just doing high-end catering. And then one day we came together with an idea like, let's infuse foods with medicinal cannabis to be able to help patients who don't want traditional chocolate, sweets, and all those other different things that you may see in most traditional cannabis markets. So from putting that collaboration together and getting into the restaurant business, I learned what the cannabis industry meant from a legalization perspective, getting distribution licenses to do certain things, but then also operating like, okay, we're trial and testing and learning. So that gray area is something that a lot of people have to kind of do personally until they learn that it's best to do it legal in the right way. And that's when we started to work with different attorneys to see how we could get involved in the cannabis space. I came back home and really started to understand business from my father, and which taught me a lot of discipline and structure and systems and how to actually run a business. He was been in business for 30 years in Ohio. So coming home and being a part of an entrepreneur family kind of gave me that purpose here in Dayton. As you said, entrepreneurship is something that, you see done in bigger cities. So Dayton at the time had a lot of manufacturing that was, invested in when it comes to the automotive industry. And that's where he got his start, his legs at in the warehouse business. So with us having the opportunity to already know and understand manufacturing, when I came home and recognized the opportunities here in Ohio, it made sense to look into the manufacturing side. And that's one thing that people don't understand. They only usually see the brand, or they only usually see the sales side, but they rarely see the side that produces the product. And that's something that piqued our interest. And since I've already kind of was doing it in California in the kitchen, learning the systems from that, it just made sense to transition it to more of a production and manufacturing, because the products that we were making is the same products that you see in brands today. And that taught me a long lesson to what I'm doing right now and how I met you in the space, and how I met all my partners who I'm working with, and taking and seeing things from a different light now. I got involved because I just wanted to learn, and also wanted to be a part of something that again chose me, and also to do a responsibility for the community that has been largely impacted, as you said in the beginning, being a Black woman, being a minority, being in a small city that doesn't have the awareness of a lot of larger business opportunities. Kind of had to do it from the grassroots and had to do it from the core. And coming together with my family and this being a family-owned business created a lot of blessings to be able to learn things together, be able to take on some challenges that we never thought could be imaginable. Like you said, as being a unicorn in this space, you have to kind of think like a unicorn because you don't have no template around you to work on.
So just so I'm clear, like what I heard in that story was pivot after pivot after pivot, right? So it's important, my listeners, I want you to understand that she never even intended to be in this industry. Like, or there's a whole nother podcast in here about what you were doing in California with music that we can't even touch on this particular podcast, this episode. So you went with something completely different in mind. You were open, you learned something, but you were learning on the edible side. You were talking like the side that honestly I think most people are most familiar with when you start talking about medicinal cannabis or marijuana just in general. That people understand that. They understand the edibles, they understand that. What they don't understand is the whole creation part, which is where your second pivot was. Go from, being in the kitchen, learning the recipes, to being like, I'm going to go to the warehouse side and learn about the distribution, the packing, and all of that. So
Yeah.
the nugget that I'm taking is like, be ready to pivot. I'm finding that all like, you wear and as this is the season I've talked about on the show, the school that I opened this year, we have pivoted
Yes.
and changed our model this year alone, probably at least 3 times, because you have
Yes.
to your
Gotta
market.
be willing to evolve. Yep.
Yes, and you have to be willing to evolve, and so I completely recognize that. So, would it be
Absolutely.
an accurate summary to say that currently, right now, Neuralabs, you work 100% in the manufacturing, the extraction side of things, and that's what Neuralabs is focused on right now. Is that because that is where you have landed today? That's the
Yes.
part of your journey that we have met you on today.
Yes, and that is accurate. Didn't know what manufacturing would mean when we landed here, but we knew that it was the production, it was the process of producing and making something. And again, it's just, our learning curve of not understanding how products are made, even outside of the cannabis industry. Minorities are 0 to less than 1% of any manufacturing industry that actually builds or creates the actual thing. I always say we're used to being the fruit and not the seed.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't understand. Yes, your seed is that vision, what you implant, but then the growth, the roots that it takes from that to actually produce something of that is something that we are not a part of from a business collective. When it comes down to building planes, when it comes down to cars, or when it comes down to food production, we're used to being the brand and the product, but not who actually makes what people see as brands.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm still learning. And you ask people like, where are people? What do people understand about our company? People still think we're a dispensary, and that's not it's not a bad thing, because it is a part of it is a part of the supply chain when it comes down to how the licenses are structured across the state. So usually, when people see the brands, they buy it, but then there's the parts that's behind the buy, and that's where we are part of the supply chain, meaning that we make the oils from the cultivation that has been grown in the state of Ohio, because everything is regulated in Ohio. I can't buy from another state and produce here. I can't sell to another state. I have to do everything regulated in this market here in Ohio. So when it comes down to the growth, and what I had to learn is, how do you operate legally in a market that's only restricted to those around you? And then also having to understand how to explain what we are and what we do. Because even when we won the license, you would think like, oh yeah, we won. It's time to go ahead and get it in. It's going to be simple. It's going to be easy. No, I had to do a lot of education and a lot of learning for myself to even understand the criteria it means to actually own a laboratory.
So I'm so glad you said all of that, and I have so many questions. And so the first question is, like, as I was listening to you talk about all the things that you have learned, and all the things that, like, the biggest misconception is that you have to still explain to people like what you do, and that it's not what everybody thinks of, which is like, we just consume it, right? Like, there's so many aspects of the industry that go beyond, far above and beyond just the consumption. And so my question is, what are the most common misconceptions about the industry that you wish people understood or knew? And then you also were talking about, and I was saying this only right now because if I don't, I'll forget, is the lack of diversity. Women, minorities, the fact that our communities were disproportionately affected, by the war on drugs, and they criminalize us like 3 times more than your average white counterparts. How are you, from where you sit, able to address that piece? Like, what the lack of diversity is there a lack of diversity issue in the industry, and how do you see it being addressed? Is there more that can be done? All these questions, I'm just putting them out there so I don't forget them. But the first one was, what are the common misconceptions that you wish people knew about the industry?
That is less than 4%, in the market that actually own an actual operating license. We wouldn't have an industry to support if it wasn't for products being made to be an industry. So we didn't have the growers, we didn't have producers, and we didn't have retail where it sells what's being grown, what's being produced. We wouldn't have an industry. So
only 4% is focused on the consumables. The rest of the industry is production
that minorities own in the actual cannabis
industry.
Okay,
I got you.
So that only 4% minority ownership. And then what does that mean? Because a lot of people think like, oh, I want to get involved in the cannabis industry, but the understanding of what involvement that is the understanding that we have to open ourselves up to. Everybody isn't meant and built to, have the operation and production. That's fine, but there's other parts of the industry that has to support that industry. So the ancillaries are equally as important. But that number is consumable of the entire cannabis market. So that's hemp, that's ancillary, that's operation. What I was referring to was that if there isn't cultivation, if there isn't manufacturing or processing, there isn't retail. You don't have a product to sell, So in order to be able to understand that dynamic of what that 4% is, there's less than 4% of us that actually own the manufacturing, the cultivation to be able to produce and manufacture products for an industry to be able to become one. So when it comes down to dissecting the real numbers and understanding the real components of how the supply chain works, is that we are less involved in the supply chain in order to create the products that's being consumed or sold. So having an understanding of what that supply chain means, what does agriculture mean, what does manufacturing means, what is these different sciences, to be able to get to understand, and how do we open up in the federally illegal industry, so we can do more thorough research, so we can have more opportunities to evolve medicine in the way, in a holistic practice that we less likely see in our communities and in general in cannabis industry.
And once you understand that we only own 4%, we're only a part of 4%.
Less than 4%. Not even own 4%.
Not even own 4%. We are involved in less than 4% of the industry at that level. And then the fact that, I read that it is $1 billion when the states that have legalized it. I mentioned this in my intro. Those states have reported, grand totals of billions of dollars in taxes being generated, from this industry. So it is $1 billion industry. But again, not only are we not in it, there are so many, and again, the parts of it that we're not even recognizing that there are opportunities. Like you mentioned, the ancillary. Everybody wants to focus on just one aspect. The ancillary products are huge, and I love what you said. We are not necessarily as a people in a position to be able to be in the manufacturing and production side. It's an issue, but in this moment where this thing is exploding, I think my question is, well, how do we get in at all on the other things and make sure that there is diversity so that we're not completely closed out of what is really right now. We're in the middle of this generation's gold rush. So you being a very prominent figure in the industry here in Ohio, the lack of diversity, how is it being addressed in the industry? From where you sit, how much of an issue is it? And what can we be doing? You mentioned the activism in the industry about the rights. Is there activism to include the disenfranchised populations that have historically been kept out of things like this? What's going on in the industry with diversity?
Yes, education is key to it. And I know it sounds so cliche, because but it's also too about how you educate yourself on the truth of what's taking place. Again, it's not just our industry that is affected by our knowledge of economics. It's not an equity issue. It's an economics issue, because when you own a business, you're equitable. That's something that you choose to give away to be able to earn economics to actually grow your entity. So when you understand that we have to build other resources around our economics and that we are valued, we shouldn't have to always sell or give it away in order to be able to have and obtain. We got to be able to sustain. Sustainability is key. And if we're not looking at ourselves as diverse, we're going against the grain. So we are a diverse company because we do represent those outlets to be able to do it, but now we need resources to be able to support it.
So if we're coming in behind the 8 ball, how is that diversity issue being addressed? We know we're coming in behind the 8 ball and we still want to be a part. How is the industry addressing the lack of diversity, or are they not? Are they not addressing it at all?
It's being addressed. There are social equity groups that are working to make sure we're equitable, but like I was saying, it's an economics thing. We have to grow ourselves in capital and resources to sustain. If we don't have those sustainabilities, we don't have equity to keep, or to be able to continue to operate and run business in this market. So we got to figure out those parts. I would love to be like, yeah, invest in me, but that I might not be the right investment for everybody, or the right brand. But there are other brands and Black-owned businesses that can be, and how do we create a network in a supply chain that we're also able to compete? Look, I don't have an issue with working with all people and all types of people. I'm just asking, as a minority company, a Black woman, that I get the same rights to be able to do business just like you are able to do it. I can do it with you, do it with me, just like I do business with you. If we go and buy every piece of clothing that we see on our bodies, it's not just you might buy a Black brand, but then you go down to the deeper level. It's like, well, who produced this Black brand? Who manufactured this thing? And then those are the things that I do a lot of my research on, because it's not against any Black brands. It's amazing that we have Black brands, because that's still part of the supply chain that we have to support, and that's the economics that we have to continue to grow so we can build residual and sustainable capital. Then when it goes down to doing business, it's like, okay, well, how about if there is a Black manufacturer who does clothing, how about we find those as Black brands to say, let's put economics into the supply chain that it goes down to the group. So then those supply chains can now have sustainability, because there's Black people who create packaging. There's people, so like, how do we continue to build that and have revenues? And it doesn't just have to be Black to Black working. You say, use me as an opportunity because I'm a manufacturer that produce, to be able to create your brand and products, because I want to be able to compete in markets just like everybody else. If 200 of us and 5 of us are minority, if the other 195 can work together, why can't the 5?
What I'm hearing is, it's like, for listeners, what I hope you heard, or what I'm taking away is, in order for us to be able to diversify the industry, we first need to understand how industry in general works, so that we can create the foundation,
Exactly.
so that the people who are in the industry are able to flourish, and that doesn't come and that comes from understanding economics, and how and like understanding that we need our own banks, and understanding that we need our own micro lending infrastructures, and we need, in order to be able to sustain, so that we can compete.
Exactly.
All the difference in the world. My last quote, there are people who are like, probably who are like, I want to get in this, I want to know more. Like, what is your advice to somebody who's now a veteran in the business? What advice do you have for someone wanting to enter the industry?
Just be in contact with with the resources that's around you. Again, having more of these conversations, having time to put aside and say, what do I want to see myself in this space? It's so many, it's so many opportunities, and it's hard to focus on one, because when you address one, there's a whole slew of things to address around it. So really identifying, what do I want to do to become in this space? I didn't, like I said, cannabis chose me, so I didn't know I would be owning a manufacturing facility and producing oils in it. But as I started to learn, I understand my why. So with my why, understanding what I wanted to do, it helped me create a path that allowed me to see more, so I can do more, and now that I understand more, I'm understand what I want to create as far as the impact. So as others are coming on board, we can say, how do we co-create? How do we find a path for you that fits in your why? Because my why may not be your why, but first, in order for us to work together, we have to understand where those come to. So there's definitely outreach things that we're doing. We're doing community service, like we did a statewide expungement clinic earlier this year, that you were able to come to Cleveland and be a part of some of the pieces for. And then we are doing other just general outreach. We did the Midwest Cannafest. That was an opportunity for people to come and understand what careers are in the cannabis space, not just only with Nora Labs, but what type of tangible products are in the medical marijuana control program, and how you can get involved in just learning the resources. I had friends who came in like, I didn't even understand that there was that many products in this program or in this market. I didn't even understand the variety. I didn't know there was patches and tinctures and capsules, and they just so many different varieties. So it's really taking the time to understand what you want to learn in it, because I can't teach you it all in one setting, and it's, and just like me, I had to equip myself, just like in your industry, you had to equip yourself with the knowledge and the understanding of what you wanted to do before you got into it to some degree. Right. So making sure that you just take on that knowledge. We are in the 2022, where we are accessible to resources. So there's resources out there. How much does it cost to start an LLC? Even from that point, knowing those basic things and understanding those resources. So many resources in Dayton, that is now available to people to understand just basic business and things to help your business. Like I used to get in contact with SCORE, and I used to, now there's the the Dayton launch
Launch
Dayton.
Dayton. Yeah, I love them.
Yep, and a whole bunch of different things that people can get involved in. So taking those resources and utilizing them, not just sitting on the resources that you have, getting active. I'm in active and engagement points in time right now. You got to show me you're active. You got to show me your interests. You got to, because that's value, that's investment, that's appreciation. If I appreciate what you're doing based off of how I take in the information that I want to learn and showing that, then that shows that investment into why I want to appreciate you and then invest into what you're doing, and vice versa. So I think it's just a lot of just that education that we got to take on from a different perspective. It doesn't have to be from my mouth, but even from your own learning. And then we can get into places of, now we can be very direct and deliberate and intentional, saying, okay, you know who you are, you know what you're coming with, you know your resources, and a lot of skills can be transferable, as well. If you have one skill, you can also transfer and gather other things that help you become better at what you've done before, and also new things that you haven't done in this industry. The beautiful thing about being in cannabis is like there's never a stop to the resources that you have available to help you learn and grow into something else. And we are, now that we have products on the market, let's get legal. We have made $1 billion in Ohio with 150,000 patients.
Wow.
And we're a state of 11 million. So there's growth around the whole industry. There's 70 new licenses coming in the dispensary market, where for us as manufacturers, we're able to produce products not just for 58 stores, but now 130 stores across the state of Ohio. So that gives us opportunities to grow and more careers and more opportunities there in the manufacturing space. But then also too, there's other companies that's growing with cultivation. They're expanding their footprints in the agricultural and the sciences in that career space opportunities. So there's a lot going on.
Do your research. Like, do your research and figure out where you're trying to go. Because to just say you want in, you have to know where. This is like a double. Like, you have to know where to jump in. So I love it. So if anybody is listening, especially those in the Dayton area, and they are interested in reaching out to NeuroLabs, either to learn more about the job opportunities, or like maybe there's someone who's like, oh, I want to partner with them because I have a workspace, whatever. If anybody's out here listening, how do they get in contact with you, Nicole?
So they can get in contact with us in a couple ways. They can also reach out to us on the website at www.noohralabs.net, net. That's where you can come and actually, look at our landing page, just do a general contact. And it's also part of, whether you can reach out to our direct team, or you can email me directly. I'll give out my email. It's Nicole.Ross, so NICKOLE.ROSS at NOOHRALABS.com. And then I'll be able to help direct you to what we're doing. It's people of our team who does our outreach and who does those type of resource and commitments and communications, because we are hiring, as we talked about earlier, and we're excited to be able to welcome our new team as we're learning the next stages. We wouldn't be able to do this without a dynamic team. My father, my sister, my mother, and then our team in general, our partners that we're working with, our investors in, our community, because, we did this grassroots, we raised every dollar, no VC, no VC. We wanted to maintain our equity in our space as a collective, so we can continue to empower and grow each other and help see those resources become fruit, see those resources become abundance.
We thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this very misunderstood, very mysterious industry. I hope, listeners, that you got a lot out of it, and I appreciate your time.
We are partnered. We got partners. We got products on the market. We just launched our MKX brand.
Yes.
So if you are medications in Ohio, we have products in Dayton, Beaver Creek. We have it in Columbus, and we're working in the Cleveland market as well. So we have gummies that's available 100 milligrams, and we'll go into a whole nother conversation about that. But we're excited about having products available that people can actually consume the medicine that we're making for brands that we believe in. So
Awesome.
we're excited.
Awesome. So you guys check them out, neuralabs.com. I'm going to put all the contact information in the description box and so you guys can see and read and learn more. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a blessing. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me today.
Absolutely. Do your research, be ready to pivot, and then check out the opportunities around you, of which Nora Labs is one. I want to thank my guest, Nicole Ross, for taking the time to speak with us today. Show notes, resources, and links to the things we mentioned are available on our website at www.justlikemepresents.com. Make sure you hit subscribe and share this podcast with other parents and educators in your circle. And if you don't mind, leave us a review. Reviews help other people find our show and begin their woke journey. Thanks for listening. And remember, if our children can see it, they can achieve it.